why would I be anything else when I could be me? No, but seriously, like, I could just do me, you know? Like, I could just live my life as me. Just whole, complete, just myself. Unabridged.
And welcome to the show. Hello, everybody. My name is Don Miller, and I'm your host of Unabridged. That's UNABRDG. It's going to take some time, I know, but at some point, we're manifesting it. It's going to be a household name. But welcome to my show, and I'm so excited to have you all, and thank you so much for listening and tuning in. Unabridged for me is, I don't want to call it a labor of love, but I want to call it a passion of love. That doesn't sound too terrible. Something that I've always wanted to do, having always enjoyed podcasts, and also wanting to find a true creative outlet for something that I wanted to do that was completely myself. And I also wanted to make sure that I was creating content that was true to me and a lot of the experiences of those around me. And that's how we got Unabridged. Unabridged is rooted in my desire, my hope for finding my true self. And I want my audience to come along on that journey with me. So each week we will talk with some incredible individuals about the amazing work that they have been able to do just by being their full selves, just by being their complete and unedited selves. And we'll also talk about a little tea because I can't run away from any parts of myself in this journey. So we have to talk about what's going on in the world, how it affects us, and also have a little education piece with it as well. And we'll get into that with our first topic. Let's get into it. So I'm not really here for any of the background or any of the foolishness. So let's just jump right into the episode. Let's get into it.
Let's get into it.
Let's get into it.
Let's get into it.
Let's get into it. Let's get into it.
Let's get into it.
Let's get into it.
Let's get into it.
Let's get into it.
Let's get into it.
Let's get into it.
All right, and let us get into it. We're so excited because I think this first week of Let's Get Into It has some good and juicy stuff to talk about. Every week in Let's Get Into It, we're going to try to take it from a couple different angles, like we said, state, local, federal, and maybe some fun stuff that's going to happen in the world because, you know, everything isn't always happening in politics, and sometimes you got to talk about all the girls. So let's get into it. Starting on the local side. So this week, council actually, no, I'm lying. 2 weeks ago, when I'm recording this, council has just come back from our summer recess, or from the city council summer recess. I'm going to keep trying to make sure I'm not speaking in the first person when I talk about local politics. But again, council just came back from summer recess, which means that we are back into having full sessions every Thursday, meaning that the girls are passing bills, we're enacting things, legislation is just coming out every Thursday. And this past Thursday, or excuse me, the Thursday before last, we had two really important pieces of legislation that were introduced. And we're going to talk about them this week and talk about what their context is for you and why they matter. So first and foremost, let's talk about the good old home team. I'm always a little biased about this, but I definitely wanted to talk about this legislation this week, and I promise I won't always be so Team Thomas focused on my Let's Get Into It. But we did have a really important piece of legislation that was introduced this week called the Exoneree Justice Package. Again, it was introduced by Councilmember Isaiah Thomas, and what this means is that now the city of Philadelphia has a set protections or supports for exonerees. Let's take it back for a second. What is an exoneree? An exoneree is an individual who was prosecuted, sentenced, and went to jail under false pretenses, meaning that they did not actually commit the crime but were still sent to prison. They still served their time. If you guys remember the Central Park Five, they're now the Exonerated Five, whole Netflix movie by Ava DuVernay. You know, these things happen in real life, and they happen at a rate a lot more than people might think, and especially in the city of Philadelphia, where our district attorney has now made this a major effort in his office to really look back and dig into some old cases where people may think there may be levels of malpractice that happen, or maybe individuals, because they were poor, because they did not understand the legal system, you know, were sent to jail under false pretenses and did not have the ability to fight back until now. Whether it was new DNA evidence that was introduced, whether they have a new lawyer team that was able to look more deeply into their cases, and now a lot of individuals are being exonerated. But unfortunately, when they get out of jail, they're not receiving support. Even though they did not commit the crime, they still went through the same experiences as someone else who went to jail who did commit the crime. And usually when those individuals come out of jail, they have a set of resources. Now, you can debate whether or not they're good or bad, but there's a process for those individuals. When you're exonerated, they basically let you walk out the door and they say, "Are bad, hopefully you don't sue, girl." But this package really aims to look at that experience because, again, those individuals did serve their time. They did go through those mental traumas. They did lose that time. They did lose their jobs. They did lose those family connections. They did lose their homes when they were away in jail, similar to their counterparts who may have actually committed those crimes. So with that, over the past decade, approximately 40 Philadelphians convicted of crimes have been exonerated and released from prison. Many other states, again, have these protections for re-entry into society, but again, Philadelphia or Pennsylvania did not. And with that, Councilman Thomas introduced what we're calling the Exonerated Justice Package that has 5 different components: education, housing, employment, justice for re-entry funds, as well as re-entry support. Now, on the education side, if an individual wanted to go to community college in Philadelphia, they can now get a full ride scholarship underneath the Cato Scholarship, was a scholarship program that was already set up by the Kennedy administration along with the community college of Philadelphia. Now those individuals can go back and get their education if they would like. The housing aspect of it allows them to access to Office of Support housing lists for housing vouchers as well as counseling to assist with housing placement. Housing is probably the number one and number 2 issues that people coming out of jail face, whether or not they're excluded from Section 8 housing or whether or not, some landlords are worried about having, formerly incarcerated staying in their facilities. Housing is already an issue across the board in Philadelphia, but now add on the fact that this person has just got out of jail and has that on their record, whether they did it or not, it still becomes a major deterrent for them to find housing. So this housing piece is extremely important. Employment. Now, we're not necessarily saying off the bat that they're going to give individuals jobs. I wish that was the case. I wish we could just say, "Here goes your job, you're good to go." But what this bill does do is it amends the fair chance hiring legislation to include exonerated individuals to remove possible barriers from employment. What does that mean, Dom? So what that means is now if you were to go to apply for a job, your record can be expunged, so you no longer have to tick that box to say, "Yes, I was convicted." Or it'll allow for your employer to see this differently, so that way, again, you do not have that black stain in your record to say, "Yes, I was in prison, but again, I was in prison falsely." Lastly, second to last, the Justice for Exonerated Funds will now provide $500 to each exonerated Philadelphian. If you leave in jail and have no money in your pocket, $500 could be a major difference for you. It could be transportation. It could be maybe I gotta find something to wear to maybe get that potential job opportunity because none of my clothes fit because I've been in jail for 4 years. Like, these small things are extremely important and they actually make a major impact on these individual lives. And of course, last but not least, re-entry support, overall assistance with applying for appropriate support benefits programs such as Medicaid and immediate retroactive healthcare benefits from PHL, CDID, and for photo identification. So basically, we're helping you to make sure that you have all the tools you need to re-enter back into society and live a healthy, fruitful life. Again, these are things that we are not thinking about, right? When we see those, scenes at press conferences with people who are exonerated and, their lawyers are out there and we're cheering with the families, those moments are amazing, but those moments continue afterwards, right? Those individuals have to rebuild their lives back again, and that is the point of the bill. The point of the bill is to make sure that the justice system, we're never going to be able to give you back that time that that was taken away from you. No one is ever going to be able to do that. But what we can do is recognize that you were set back just like anybody else and that you're going to need some support, and we're here to help you with that. So that is the Exonerated Justice Package. Again, I want to put this in, and I should have said this at the beginning. None of the information that I have is, backroom knowledge or anything like that. I'm going to link all of my articles that I talk about, any topic that I talk about. I'm going to link all my sources in the show notes as well as on the website. So make sure to check that out so you can learn more about a lot of the things that I'm talking about and kind of, create your own opinions about this. I'm going to always be as unbiased as I possibly can. It's a little hard when you actually work in these spaces, but, I do want to just allow you all to form your own opinions about anything that I talk about, and I would love to hear from you. What do you guys think about this? Do you think the bill should have gone further? I know one thing that we hear a lot about is people wishing that we have a level of mental health support, which, again, as we said in the beginning, can be one of the most major detriments for someone who has just been released from prison. So, there's maybe this bill could have gone a little bit further. I would love to hear from you, and what do you guys think? Second, on the local side, and this is one of the big girlies, which is why I saved it for last. Councilmember Ketsi Lozado this week, along with Councilmember at large Jim Harity, introduced a bill around safe injection sites. Yes, or as some of the girls call it, what was the name of it? My apologies. Overdose prevention sites. Now, this is a very important issue in the city of Philadelphia. If you do not know, if you're not living in Philadelphia, or if you are a Philly, you already know, Kensington is here, Kensington is real, and Frankfurt is going through a massive upset right now because of the opioid epidemic that has hit America. Philadelphia has just been hit so hard because of, a lot of the decisions that were made which really cornered these people into this one neighborhood and is now becoming a major detriment. And this neighborhood is represented by Councilmember Lozado, which I think is really what pushed her, or not I think, which I know has really pushed her to introduce this bill. And safe injection sites is something that we've been talking about to solve this issue for a very long time now. You can look at other municipalities, I believe in Canada, New York, they have these safe injection sites, and people have many opinions about it. Again, I'm going to link the notes to this so you guys can kind of dig a little bit more into some of the background of safe injection sites and how we even got to this point. But people have a lot of varying opinions about it. I think that what's so crazy to me when I hear aspects of this argument is that people will come and say, my child died of an overdose and I completely support these injection sites. Or they'll say, I was a former addict and I do not support these sites. So it's not a cookie cutter solution for this. Now let's talk about the bill. So the bill introduced by Member Lozado and Member Harity in the first session considered and approved a controversial measure that will make much more difficult for any safe injection site to be located in most neighborhoods across the city of Philadelphia, unless the neighborhoods organizations first hear it. The bill number is bill number 230432. Again, giving that to you so you can kind of do your own research. Was sponsored by, again, Councilmember Lozado from the 7th District, which is a major concentration of this issue. Now will require that for any safe injection site to be opened in any district except for the Southwest Philadelphia district represented by Member Gaudier has to now go through community approval. And it's basically going to go through what the zoning process or the regular zoning process would be, which would it requires that the individuals who want to open up these sites, similar to anybody who may want to add an additional awning to their house or wants to extend their property past what it usually was, they have to get approval from that through the community organizations, usually through what people call RTOs, redevelopment. No, let me not. I'm going to just link with the RTOs mean at the bottom. I'm not even going to try because I'm blanking on right now. It's one of those, it's like one of those like insider terms that people say all the time. Oh, you just go to your RTO. And I'm just like blanking on the name right now. But I will add it at the bottom here if I'm on YouTube or add it somewhere so I know what it actually is. But all that to say, it means that it's going to have to go through community review. And I mean, given the past results of this, I mean, I can't see many communities even allowing it to come. I read an op-ed this morning by Solomon Jones, who is a WURD co-host and author, and who himself is a former cocaine addict. He says it, he talks about it, he has books about it, it's not a secret. He talked about, the bill not going further enough, saying that these sites may be seen as a way for people to continue to safely use this and not necessarily a deterrent for them to stop, right? So, we have a lot of issues around this, and a lot of people don't know. When I think about this issue often, and having lived in the city of Philadelphia my whole entire life, I spend a lot of time in Kensington. My mom is an educator there. My boss still coaches there. We run programs in that area. You know something has to be done, but it's what needs to be done is always the question. We worry about the economic impact of many of the businesses that live around there, so that's one aspect. You worry about the students that live and have to go to school in those areas. There are actually a lot of amazing institutions in this area, but are blighted by the fact that this issue is so concentrated in this one neighborhood. You also think about the individuals who just live here, who have lived here for forever. Philadelphia is a community of neighborhoods. We have one of the highest ownership rates of houses maybe in the country. We love middle neighborhoods all day. We love them. And that is the same for Kensington. That's just not an uptown thing. That's not a West Philly thing. That is all over the city where we own our homes and we love our neighborhoods. We take pride in our neighborhoods. So what about those individuals who take pride in living in Kensington? They're now, dealing with the situation. So for them, they probably have a different way that they would want to address this opioid epidemic. And you have individuals too on this other end who see addiction for what it truly is, which is a true disease that these people need a lot more than just law and order to solve. So again, I'm always going to try to be as not biased as possible. I'm going to be honest. I don't know where I send on, overdose prevention sites or on safe injection sites. I don't know yet because I have not witnessed it. I haven't talked to enough individuals about it, but I do believe that this legislation does not aim to ban them across the board, but it does make you take into consideration for the communities that will be impacted by this. And I think that is a bare minimum that we can do for these individuals. Just how do you feel about this? Maybe they'll surprise you. Maybe they say, you know what, maybe we can take this because we understand that problem, or we do understand the problem. Or maybe some neighborhoods just really ain't gonna be rocking with it. And that's the prerogative as well. But again, this is a complex issue and we do have a long way to go. And I'm gonna keep updated on this as this unfolds. And again, I'm going to, link all the show notes, and this is not any background information. All of this can be seen on phlcouncil.com, which is actually where I pulled this from, so definitely make sure you check this out. All right. Next up, the Fed girlies. They are really killing this out here. So the Feds are always doing the most, and I'm not going to be as deep into federal politics like that because, it's a lot. And I'm not saying that it's too much to talk about. I'm just saying, it's kind of further away than we like to think about, and they do affect major aspects of our life. You better go out and vote for president because we need Biden. I'm not going to be biased about that. I'm going to be unapologetic about that. But it does seem a little bit more distant for us, and I always want to make sure I'm grounding politics back into things that are really relevant to my audience. So that's why today I'm going to talk about something that is pending that will likely affect a lot of individuals, and that is the looming of a government shutdown. I would add a sound here, but I'm going to try to let's get into it a little bit serious, especially when I talk about topics like this. A government shutdown happens when Congress cannot decide on how to spend our money and they can't get a bill to the president. That's it. People's jobs are stopped. Certain benefits, not all benefits, but certain benefits are, cut back or slower. The girls can't get their passports. All of these major functions that are run by federal government is literally shut down just because a bunch of pop-ups and moms can't just say, this is how you want to spend the money. And granted, budgeting process is major, right? Sidebar, this may be the little insider part, but I have worked with government budgets. It takes a lot. People have so many priorities. They have their own stakeholders. They have the communities they serve. They have their own priorities. They have their own projects. And this is all funded by the same pot. And people who are in the exact opposite of your feelings have their own set of things too, which are going to, not be aligning with you. And we only have but so much money to spend. I mean, granted, we are richest nation in the world, but when you actually boil down to it, you take out the money for things that we have to pay for, think about things that are sustaining for us, and the pot becomes much smaller. And I think that that's why we get into these situations, is that, resources, and I can't remember who said this. I don't know, it might have been Isaiah. I'm always quoting him or stuff like that. But, government is really just the decision on how we spend scarce resources. And that's what the legislator is doing right now. And that is why we're about to go into this horrible government shutdown. And the reason why I'm calling it horrible, because I think, I know that this is probably one of the greatest divisions that we've had in our Congress. Usually, we have enough moderates that can get us through. We usually have enough moderates who can just talk to their people, listen, y'all, we got to get this together, the troops. But we don't have enough of those people anymore, right? We have a lot of people that have been pulled tightly into their corners because of the way politics has been going for the last few years. Shout out to Donald Trump. We've seen people kind of hold tight into their corners, which sometimes do not mesh with their counterparts, with our other members across the aisle, and that has gotten us to this point. In an article which I read to prepare for today, that was released in PBS, I'm going to link it in my show notes. The Republicans who actually are in control of the House right now, Democrats are ahead of the Senate right now. They're basically saying they're not going to hold loose. Usually what our government has the ability to do when we get into these really tight situations is pass a continuation resolution, which will allow us to just keep the lights on while we figure out the big picture stuff. But this time around, they're not even thinking about doing that, right? They think that any level of allowing for this to happen is going to be a concession to Biden. And I just think that that's absolutely ridiculous. When you hold tight to your corners like that, that means that you are not thinking about the individuals that we truly serve, and that is your job. You are at the most basic essence of who you are, a representative. So you are not there for yourself. You are there for representing the groups that you are responsible for, that voted you into office. But instead, you decide to hold true to your corners and don't understand the way that these decisions are going to affect those individuals. And that's where we are right now. The government budget is set to expire on October 1st. So that means that October 1st at 12:01, the government could be shut down, and we could be looking at weeks and weeks of government shutdown. Now, what happens when the government shut down? Now, I know we talked about some of our basic functions being able to still, keep going. Social Security checks are still going to be going out. But other functions such as people getting passports, that's likely out the window. And we already know that there's a massive backlog for people getting passports. Certain government contractors won't be getting paid, so that work will cease to exist. I'm trying to think what else happens. Oh, and then, outside of just the actual tangible things that we have that are, a part of the actual government, run by the government, but there's a feeling or a sense that gets shaken when the government shuts down. Our economy, granted, will usually bounces back as soon as the government opens back up, is really going to take a major hit, not just in terms of, percentage points, where they said that economic growth will drop 0.2% every week the government is shut down, but we also lose faith. The government our bottom line is people's emotions. And I say this all the time. Like, facts and numbers mean a lot, but when you're a participatory government, when you are a democracy, your bottom line are people's feelings. It's not numbers. You can show them all the charts you want, but they know how they feel and they don't really care beyond that point. So when you tell me that, oh yeah, we just shut down for 2 weeks, that shakes the core of people believing in many systems that we are supposed to hold true. In addition to, the economic growth that we'll see, many federal employees will be impacted. And why do we want to make people not be able to work? We already have 1 million protests that are going on right now. Shout out to UAW. Shout out to the writers and the actors. Why are we creating our own problems like this? I don't understand that. I told y'all, the federal girlies, I'm sorry, I keep hitting the mic because I get so passionate about this, but the federal girlies are too much. They need to figure it out. Because it's just too many important things on the line right now. And that is also why this 2024 election, I'm going to have my eyes like this, like wide open, because we have so much on the line right now. And I don't want to be here again. I don't want to be in this divisive climate where we just can't even talk to each other. Because I think, people forget the essence of what government is supposed to be about. And I thought, I'm going to slip in and out of my political theories bag sometimes because I do love political theory. But that was the reason why we started governments, was to add a level of protection, a level of community, to actually support one another. Man in the state of nature is wild and decided to say, I'm going to give up that aspect of my freedom to do whatever I want because I want protections and I want community and I want to survive easier. That is the reason why we started this shit. I digress. I'm always going to go on my political theory soapbox. That's the reason why I'm here. But anyway, that's what's going on with the state girlies. We'll see what happens October 1st. Again, I'm going to link this lovely article. It gives a lot of really dope background about, the what, the how, and how many times this has happened. Because again, government shutdowns happen all the time. But again, the climate has never been this divisive. I mean, has a Trump outside leading this shit? Come on. The girls are not listening. All right. And last but not least, how many minutes I got? All right, but we still make a good time. Get into it. Okay. Last but not least, this is stateside. I'm going to keep it short, keep it quick. State girls always got a lot going on. I'm going to just keep you guys abreast. But I think this one was super important, and I wanted to end on a high note. I didn't want to just end all sad. But on September 19th, Democrat Lindsey Powell became the newest House representative winning the election in the 21st House Democratic District. Or not Democratic District, House District. It's Democratic now, but it's not the Democratic District. This is amazing, right? Because now the Pennsylvania House continues to keep our majority as Democrats. Shout out to House Speaker Joanna Clinton. She can keep her seat. We can keep going, and we can potentially do some amazing work. This is the first time that we've had this majority in a very long time. And when we got it, it was so rocky because we had a lot of special elections because many of the state representatives who held or helped keep that majority actually got to either go to different seats. Look at Ed Gainey. He became a mayor in Pittsburgh. We had Summer Lee. She became a congresswoman, and now she's in D.C. So the girls are actually moving up, and it's incredible. But that did kind of shake our ability to confirm our Democratic majority in the House. But now, because of Ms. Powell, shout out to Ms. Lindsay. She is a sis too, which also makes it great. You know, Lindsay is now the newest member, and she was ensured our Democratic majority. And the thing about it is that she actually won like a lot. Like, she kind of blew the girls out the water. Now, granted, she had a lot more money and was a little bit more supported, but I always just love when I hear a black girl blowing the girls out, because it's hard for black girls to run for office. So in a special election where nobody cared, come on, y'all. So shout out to Ms. Lindsay Powell. Shout out to the State House representatives. Y'all gonna keep doing amazing work. I have faith in you guys, and I wanted to end on a high note. So let's get into it for this week. Do I have more time? Maybe it's not. Oh, I got a couple more minutes. Let's do a fun one. What are we watching right now? What am I watching right now? I'm watching 2 shows consistently. Y'all wanna know? I'm a binger, so I pick like 2 shows to continuously binge. And I also don't like to really watch heavy stuff, because the nature of my job is like super heavy. So give me the goofiest shit you got. So I am right now watching Top Boy Summer House, and I'm watching Will and Grace at the same time. Top Boy Summer House is giving The Wire, but London. It's like The Wire, but they call the midwives backdrop. Okay, it's really good though. The actors are incredible. Like, I am into it, especially the little kid actors. Whenever I see little kid actors just serving emotion, I'm like, that's an 11-year-old. How are you serving this type of emotion? That's what Top Boy is giving to you. And then plus it gives a lot of different layers around, you know, like the drug gang, and not just, oh, we're trying to trap, we're trying to get. It's like, no, look at the mental health impact of this. This is connected to immigration here in London. This is, you know, like, it's so many levels of this. The fact that Summer House is a government-run, you know, homing or housing development in London, and they're literally building their drug game, and they're like, come on, like, let's talk about that. So, Top Boy Summer House, highly recommend. It's on Netflix, and then they actually have the regular Top Boy that just came out. I'm going to start that soon when I finish the first Top Boy, which technically is like, they're like a spinoff of one or the other, even though some of the characters overlap. But definitely a big fan of Top Boy. And Will and Grace, I just need something light, cash, nothing crazy happening. You know, I'm always here for the girls. But like, one thing about early 2000s, late 90s sitcoms, like, those are some of my favorites. Shout out to Living Single, you know what I mean? But some of that shit be problematic. The things that they be saying on Will and Grace sometimes, I'm like, the girls would be canceled if they said this today. Like, it would be so bad. Just some of the jokes, they take that, we're a gay show, so we want to use the F-bomb. Like, they take it right to heart. So yeah, it is a little bit cringe sometimes, but it is such a good, funny show, and, you know, kind of reminds me of like simpler times. So that was Let's Get Into It. I'm super excited to get into our next segment. Thank you.
It's important to be our whole, unedited, unabridged selves whenever possible, being fully authentic with our audience. But what about those moments that we can't be? What if tomorrow you had to sit on a panel, give an interview, deliver a speech, or even go on TV? Would you know what to say and how to say it so that your message is best received? Reach out to Halone Strategies to help your dream become a reality. Halone Strategies is here for your media training or branding needs to help others see you the way that you want to be seen. Reach out to Halone Strategies, that's HALON, online, on Instagram or LinkedIn. Now, back to Unabridged.
All right. I'm so excited. My first interview for my Unabridged journey. JK. I'm not even going to lie to the girls. This is actually me and Ciara's second time doing this.
It is.
But we're here now. We're in the MQ Factory studio. Look how the sound quality is just even on a whole other level. So I'm just happy to be here. Happy you were able to do this again with me.
I know, right? In the rain. It's been one of those days, but
I know, but
we're here.
Hopefully this puts a nice sunny shot on our day. Talking about, you know, what makes us dope.
I think, listen, I'm sure it will. I'm sure it will.
All right, let's get into it. So everybody, a real official intro. This is the lovely Ciara, aka Queen Joe. And Ciara is like the kind of person I always talk about as my example when I tell people about the show. I'm like, I want people to know about her more, but like not even just like people to know about you, but I just don't think they really know the mindset behind it and all the amazing stuff that you actually have promoted and pushed. Just talk about being yourself. So that's what I really want to talk about today. So let's get right into the interview. Let's keep it nice and tight. So like, tell the girls who you are.
Okay, so I am Ciara. Obviously, it's really funny that it's really funny when you ask me a question because somebody said to me the other day like they asked me my name and I was like, we were out and I said Ciara, and then another person was like, oh, this whole time I've just been calling you Queen Joe. And I'm like, I mean, that's me too. And they're like, well, we're in a artistic space. Like, I would have thought you would have introduced yourself as Queen Joe. And I'm like, no, I'm very clear that Queen Joe is a secondary character to who I am in general. But for those who don't know, right, like, I am a regular round-away girl, okay? I'm also a rapper. People would like to say that I'm like some city advocate or an advocate for the arts, and I think that title makes sense, but I also know that it is not in the traditional way. I think I do a lot of these things almost begrudgingly, not because I wake up like sunny, like, oh, how can I save the, what can I, you know, that's not my person.
The art,
right. That is not. I'm not even going to put that out there like that's my personality because it isn't. But I am a person that's like, all right, I don't like what's happening around me, and if nobody else is going to do it, I guess I'm gonna do it.
That's actually like a perfect segue into my next question.
Go ahead.
Because I think that that's definitely like how this whole thing got started. It was just, and I'm gonna let you explain this a little bit more, but and like why you'll see the title of the show and everything. So like, I guess we can even talk about like how we actually got connected and kind of the start of that work. Because it definitely, when people kind of, you know, see the work that happened, and we'll talk about that too, you know, they don't really expect that this is the origin of it. So like, talk a little bit about that, like how you kind of even started, like which is how we got connected. So let's talk about that.
For sure. So I come from nightlife, right? Like, I am a rapper, but I'm also a host. I do events. I've worked all different facets of events, and I've worked with a ton of different artists and events. But the pandemic happened, like everybody knows, and a lot of those things were shut down, especially nightlife. Now, what I will say is that I'm not going to say I'm prepared for situations like that, but things like this scare me enough to keep my 9-to-5 job. You know, I like my health insurance. I'm saying that to say, though, everybody around me was affected, though. You know, everybody around me was trying to figure out how they're going to pay their bills, how they were going to continue their artistry, if they wanted to continue their artistry, right? Like, people want to give up. All sorts of things. And I am a person, when I don't like something, I'm looking for answers, because they zeroed out the arts budget. So there was that. So I'm like, well, whose fault is this? That's my first question. And how am I going to go talk to whose fault this is? So through like a ton of different articles, you know, a ton of different things, I just decided to be like a roadmap to be like, this is the person that is to blame, right? Like, of course, I've had what I would consider to be my due diligence. But, you know, trolling, just on Instagram, trolling, you know, adding all the city council members, adding the mayor, adding anybody that I felt like was the reason for this quote tragedy. But to my surprise, with the amount of buzz that I got, it was different people who reached out to me. One of those people being council member Isaiah Thomas, which was really surprising. He was like, let's jump on a call. And I was like, okay. So we get on a call, and I remember thinking to myself, like, just because he called me does not make me think that I'm going to like them. Like, just because you reached out, right? Don't mean that it's about to be a thing. Because people pander people all the time. But what I love about the conversation was, he was like, all right, look, you're right about this, but you're wrong about this. You're right about that. You're wrong about this. So I hear your concerns. Let's talk more. But he was like, what you can do for me is, I'm going to put together some city forums, and I want you to be a part of them and invite everybody that you feel is affected by this. So I said, okay. Over the next 2 weeks, I was preparing for it, but it was funny because I want to say maybe like 3 days before, he was like, oh yeah, well, you're going to host it. And I was like,
that's very Isaiah Thomas fashion.
I was like, all right, you said I had to invite people. You didn't say that I had to lead it, but okay. So in those next 3 days, I just, tried to figure out the best way to be able to present myself, the best way to be able to present my community, and allow everybody to say what needed to be said. They did that. He and Councilwoman Gilmore Richardson must have been somewhat impressed by it, especially over the course of 2 meetings. It wasn't one, it was 2. So much so that they were like, okay, well, we have this thing going on, right, where, we have a lot of different task force because of the pandemic, and we would like to have an arts and culture task force committed to telling us what the people need, what's the best way you guys think we should be spending the money, etc. And and after that, we were on a fast track to creating a group of people that were led to do just that. And so through that, obviously, I met you, right? And that was also interesting too, because getting to know his staff is kind of like what led to like a certain level of trust, right? Because yes, he is the person at the top, but there are like day-to-day activities that I had to do with you guys, right? Whether that is, filtering over 100, 200 interviews just for the task force itself, whether that is, coming together to plan a festival within a 2-week period, trying to find funding for the arts within a 2-week period. So getting to know you guys as an extension of what I would assume his brand to be. I know people don't like to be like, oh, this is brand,
right?
But it is an extension of and a testament to who he is, because you guys are just, amazing. Have been amazing to work with. Although I do understand from your account, you were not sure that would be the case.
Right? No, no. It was. I think that in the beginning, just the way that you were introduced, again, was not the traditional way, right? Like, and a lot of the girls will troll on Instagram. A lot of people will troll, especially around the pandemic time, where people were just pissed off, right? And they had the right to be pissed off. It was a lot of just BS going on. That people were not receiving the communications that they were used to, and they were getting told that their lives had to stop without really much explanation. So, everybody had tensions. Tensions were high, and I remember when Isaiah was like, "You gotta listen to this shorty here. She's spitting some real stuff." And I'm like, "Man, no, I'm looking for masks right now, right?" So, that was definitely our introduction, but. What it kind of grew to was something incredible, right? Like over $2 million in individual grant opportunities for artists in the city of Philadelphia. That was nothing like the city had done before. The creation of the nighttime economy manager, that's the commerce department, and just so many other incredible things. I even think just the advocates that worked on the task force were able to make incredible connections, which propelled the arts and culture conversation to a way new light than it was in before.
For sure.
Sure. So, it was definitely a time, and I think again it was not the natural way. And again, I'm going to link a lot of the work of the task force and stuff like that in the show notes as well as on the website. But I want to talk more about the mindset, right? Because I think we can find articles all day about what articles the task force have done and all that and stuff. But I think people don't think about what it takes to start trolling your top elected officials, right? Like, these aren't like regular celebrities who are just going to egg you. Like these are your local elected officials. You voted for these people technically, right? Like they should listen to you. So, like, talk about like that mindset. Is that something that's kind of always been with you to, speak truth to power? Or is that something that you kind of had to, build up in yourself?
Yeah. So when I went to school, I was a journalism major, poli-sci minor. So. So I am not afraid or intimidated by anything, right? Worst case scenario, I'm wrong. I'm not embarrassed to be wrong. Like I'm not embarrassed to be wrong. And so, so trolling for me comes naturally also because, again, having a journalism background means that I do a little something, a little some research. But not just that. Like, I mean, you hit the nail right on the head. Like, I look at it like this. Oh man, God, please don't let this come out as arrogant as this is going to sound. But when I think of like city officials, I'm like, you work for us. How are you dictating to me what I'm supposed to you work for us, and so that was that. But also I learned from my mom. Oh, let me tell you, my mother is the best. Mom,
Shout out to
you know,
mom.
I love you. But my mom will say, so my mom is the most incredible person. My mother is a person that does not take no for an answer. She's like, okay, if you get a no right now, that means you come back and you do it again, right? And she's found ways around every situation, every customer service. Like the woman that, like, you go to a place and they're like, we don't do no returns. Okay, Renee will get a return. Renee will get a return.
Right.
Okay, and if for some reason you want to give her a hassle, she's going to give you a bigger reason to she's the best person in your corner, but she's also a very vicious enemy if you become that. I feel like I'm very fortunate enough. I feel like I'm fortunate in that I can afford to be that. Right? I think a lot of people want to do those things, but they don't have the luxury to do it. And the reason why I say luxury is my 9-to-5 job has nothing to do with the arts. Right. There's nothing you can say that's going to get me canceled. I can say whatever it is that I want to say because I don't have to hold on to those things, right? Also, I just really do have, like, I don't have children, right? Like, my livelihood is all based upon me. So I do have a who gonna check me boo type attitude. Right. And I walk into spaces with who gonna check me boo attitude because I know that I walk into spaces as the wild card, right? And not the wild card in a vicious way, even though I know myself to be that. Yeah, I'm the wild card in the I did not expect this person cannot cause that much trouble kind of way. My brother told me at some point, and I think I've said this story to you before, a lot of things just made me very angry. I'm a feminist, for those who don't know, right? Like, a lot of things make me angry, and I brought to my brother, I was like, I have to come to spaces with a certain level of vigor because I'm smaller, because I am female, because I am, all these things. And I was like, it's like a gazelle, right? Like, everybody in the jungle is thirsty, right? And it's a pond. And as a gazelle, it's a bunch of lions sitting by the water. You got to figure out how you about to get that water. And, sometimes you got to be the element of distraction and surprise. You got to come with a bang that way they unexpected. Because if you come over all nice, like, can I have some water, Mr. Lion? Right. Get my head bit off. Right. And then he said to me, Ciara, that's your problem. You see yourself as the gazelle, not the lion. Right, and when he said that, that really like hit me. Like, oh no, you know what? You're right. I am the lion. You're right. Let me
recognize my true animal.
Right. I'm not a victim. No, but people need to learn that though, because I'm not a victim. Right. People who sit around and complain about things amongst each other, right? But then when an opportunity is afforded to them to change it, and they don't change it. At that point you love being victimized by that.
Like
you
love
do
the misery, the pain.
Yeah, like you identify with that just so much, and I'm not a person who wants to identify with that. Now, I do understand that there is nuance in that, right? There are people who try to change things, and over a while they become jaded with the situation. They believe that nothing is going to change, and I understand why they believe that. But I do also understand that it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you feel like nothing is going to change, guess what? It's not going to change.
I love how you say they identify, because like it becomes a part of who they are now. Like this struggle, like I have this struggle mindset. Everything I do is about a struggle. It's like it does not have to be that way.
It really doesn't. And again, I don't want people to think that my saying that takes away from their experience and what it is that they've gone through. But to me, at the same time, again, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. You are not responsible for the bad things that happen to you in your life, but you are responsible for how you deal with it. And a lot of, and that goes with, again, some of these things that are happening as well. If you don't believe in the people in your city or city council and all those other things, I mean, there are other routes that you could take. Get that person out of office. Put somebody that you want into office. If you don't believe in the system at all, right, then you need to come up with a way to spearhead a way to fix the problems in your community that you think on a personal level. I know people who do that all the time. I know people who are just like, you know what, I really don't deal with the political space like that, but I don't like what's going on in my community. Let me come up with a system of brotherhood to go and fight the violence that is actually happening in my community. And when we could all do things at the same time, you know, I am a person who believes that the success of both Martin Luther King and Malcolm X is part of partly in part because they both were doing things at the same time.
Yep.
Even if it seemed like it was conflicting at a point, doing it at the same time means that there are other people fighting more than one beast, right? I have a friend who's in the military, and he was saying, you know, some of the hardest things to be in the military when, you know, you are a U.S. soldier is that you go one place and you think that you're fighting one enemy, when that's not true. There are 7 different enemies in one space at one time, and they all live by different codes, right? And so even though you might have the upper hand, right, because you have the weapons, you have the numbers, you have whatever, trying to figure out a strategy when you have 7 other groups, right, that have different codes under attack at the same time, that becomes a force to reckon with.
Right.
And I think that we as a people, and I'm not talking about a us versus them mentality when it comes to the community versus politicians. I mean us who believe in the same ideals versus those who believe in our oppression. We could become a really good adversary for them if we decided to come together, you know, to support one particular idea, but we have like different fronts in doing that. And so that's what my journey at the task force has taught me. And I think a lot of that is, that's where it's rooted in for me.
Yeah, I think the way you just explained that is so important, because like the task force and the work that we've done around that has like low-key become a blueprint for a lot of the way we make change in the city of Philadelphia and the way people want change to happen. So like now we have people from different sectors, whether it's the business sector, whether or not it's like, you know, if you want to take fashion out of, you know, parts of arts and culture, you know, they're coming to us now wanting to replicate that because of the results that we've seen. But people, and I always explain to them, is like, you have to understand that while government was really, you know, a part of the resource aspect of it, the actual mindset shift was created by the people who were encouraging the movement, which were the advocates, which were the task force, which were the task force's homies and the task force's network.
I'm glad you brought that up. Philly Culture United.
Right,
it was so neat. It really was. I'm glad you brought that up, because it's easy to take credit for things as an individual, and especially when you see, you know, when there's perceived accolades that come with that. But a lot of the work, right, even the research that we had to do is built upon research from other arts organizations and other arts advocacy groups, right? And what I love is that people will say things like, we don't stick together. But that's not true, because, you know, everybody was readily available to share the information, to share the resources, right? Once we tapped in, like, hey, Aaliyah did that.
Right.
Hey, you know, even people that in the beginning I probably would have never thought, right? Whether we talking about what's going on at the Greater Philadelphia Cultural Alliance, etc. Like, they ended up coming up with some things, right? The people at the Philadelphia Chamber of Commerce, all those things. And even though, again, you can find at least one person in those organizations that's willing to give you more information if you do your due diligence, right? And so again, it is, people say like crabs in a barrel or whatever, like all those things, and I understand the adage, but you really just got to do the work. You know, if somebody says no, go to the next. Somebody say no, go to the next, go to the next, go to the next, and you'll find it. It's a lot of work.
Right, for sure.
It's 60 hours a week.
Especially in Philly. Like, the girls always say that we have a crab in the barrel, or we're like a hater society, but I'm like, you're just not living in the right community, because Philly does have very supportive communities around anything, right? Like, you can love anything, and you can find that community that is going to love and support you. Now, they may put you through a couple of the rings, girls, to make sure you're genuine.
Listen,
right? They don't put you through the ringer.
Philly Boo Destiny's Child down here, okay? All right, and Beyonce can get a little boo. Anybody. But see, that's
Santa Claus. Okay?
Listen, but you know what though? That's what I love about my city, because the thing is, we're not going to give you the best time just because.
Right.
You gotta earn it.
You gotta earn it, and then when you earn it, the loyalty is unmatched.
Okay, look at Michael Vick.
Right. I still love Michael Vick.
That's what I'm saying. Look at Allen Iverson, who's not even from Philadelphia. You can't tell me nothing about AI.
Right. No, the girls
love
for AI. Okay, like AI was the one basketball player I knew.
Club Fridays. Okay,
Listen.
let me tell you something.
But no, I think that was really good at like base setting for a lot of the work that came out of that space, and a lot of it, which is powered by the individuals and their own mindsets and what was important to them, and what was important to you at that time too. So I want to kind of talk more about that mindset, right? And what are some things because again, I always want the show to be, you know, helpful and inspirational to the listeners too. But like, what are some of the things that you feel like really helps to maintain that live personality? What are things that you kind of do in your daily to, you know, keep that attitude, keep that fight going, keep that mindset that, you know, makes you the person that you are? Like, what are some of those things that you know, can do to maintain that?
Yeah, a lot of those things for me starts with reading and communication. Because the thing is, I am very well aware of, I'm self-aware, but I'm also like community self-aware. And a lot of that has to do with reading the news, right? Like keeping abreast of what actually is happening in the city. And then also being out in nightlife, being out in like, I am not a person who's afraid to go out by myself, and I'm not afraid to have a conversation with anybody. Unfortunately, I'm also not afraid to jump in on your conversation if I feel like what you're saying is dangerous. So I'll hop in, I'll enter, and I know when to exit. Right. You know what I mean? Right. Like, you know. But I think that's what it is. I think it's just staying curious and staying self-aware. I think reading is important because I think the vocabulary is important, and I think it also helps boost your confidence so that when you are jumping in these conversations, you're not intimidated by, you know, jargon and or the level of knowledge that other people know. I think a lot of people are afraid to jump in those conversations because they don't feel confident enough, and people don't want to be made a fool of. So, you know, you got to do what's best to protect you, and a lot of that, again, is conversation, talking to the people around you that you trust the most. I have 10 best friends. People hear that and they're like, that is the weirdest thing. You can't be that close to that many people.
No, I get it.
But I really do, and a lot of my time is taken by catching up with those 10 people, and they all live in different walks of life, and they all have different things going on that's ailing them or whatever. And so I consider myself to be a problem solver. So I'm like, so somebody will tell me something, and if it's something I never heard before, I'm intrigued by it, right? Even if it is just like a 2-week obsession, I'm intrigued by it. So I'm gonna continue to look into that thing for those 2 weeks so that I can be knowledgeable enough to say, okay, this is how you fix it. Or after these 2 weeks, I don't know how to fix it, but I've done enough research to figure out that this is the person that I need to talk to fix it. So I think those are the skills. I think it's just constant communication with people, putting myself in places with people that I don't know, inserting myself in situations that I feel like, you know, speak to me, and just, again, just being well-read.
As the girls say, reading is fundamental. Right, so my final question, and I think I would be remiss if I didn't ask about this. What is like the hardest part of this stuff, though? Like, cause like I think we talk about, you know, being ourselves and just being fearless and doing all the things, but sometimes people listening may be like, that's actually not that easy. Like just showing up, just, you know, inserting yourself in conversations or practicing with your friends. Sometimes like that stuff is not, you know, as cookie cutter for certain people. And not to say that it is for you, but you make it look easy. So, like, what do you think are the most difficult parts about that?
So I will say twofold. I'm gonna start with the easiest one. Is one of the hardest things that I had to do when on the task force was learn to tuck my ego. Because I am a person that does not like disrespect in any form. And I'm also a person that if I feel like disrespect is coming, I'm probably going to go at you like a wild dog. And trying not to do that and humble myself, even in situations with people that just was ridiculous, was a task, right? Because I'm like, because you will run into people that believe that you don't belong in whatever space or position or wherever you're going to go in, and sometimes you got to work with those people. And
a Philly Joan that is very hard.
That is
you on go.
Oh my
I love
God.
to cut a hoe off who I don't like.
Oh my yo.
I don't like you. I get joy in that. I'm like, no, I don't got to talk to her.
Exactly. Right. And so learning how to humble myself and like really just, you know, not necessarily take it, but just like not react was one of the hardest things I've had to do. As far as everything else though, inserting myself in conversations and talking to people that I don't know, I'm all right. You seen Green Mile? No. What is 8 Mile?
I was like, Green Mile.
Green Mile. 8 Mile.
Yes.
You seen 8 Mile,
Yes.
right? And you know how the end of 8 Mile, where Eminem does this rap about himself, so nobody else can say anything about himself. That's kind of me, right? Like I am a rapper, right? And I'm a rapper who's been creating like bars and battles for people I didn't like since I was 10 years old. And when you are in rap, you could say the most braggadocious, vivacious, ridiculous stuff, and everybody get away with it. It's rap, it's hip hop. That's what it is, and that is really what prepared me for this. That's what gives and gave me the bravado to be able to talk to anyone about anything, because if you can't rap, people gonna boo you, especially here in Philly. So there was times when my raps was whack. You 11, you starting out. There was times, and I got enough booze in my life to be able to get over that. And I also have this adverse thing that a lot of people, the more nervous they get, the more quiet they are. I'm actually the opposite. The more nervous I am, the louder I am.
Oh, wow.
Right? The more it's a defense mechanism in the same way that, but I just learned to allow my defense mechanism to work for me. But I think other people can do the same thing. If you are a shy person, but you're very resourceful, I know everybody's heard the whole thing about I'm your rapper's favorite rapper. I'm your artist's favorite artist, right? Like you might not be the one that's the most boisterous, but you might also be the person that has the most connectivity, or, on a one-on-one level.
Right.
So your job might be the person that influences the talking head to say certain things or to do certain things, or you might be better at organization, right? You might be like, I don't know how to do this, but I know how to get two people in the same room. Right? So let me figure out how to get two people in the same room, and if you come up with an idea that you think is worthy and you can't carry it out, give it away.
Right.
Everybody can play their part. I've given away things that I just haven't been an expert in, for a while. There are things that I'm proud of being on the task force that I didn't directly do. One of those things is the ballroom mural that's coming up on 13th. One of my older cousins that I refer to as my Uncle Michael was heavily into ballroom, rest in peace. And he was a big part of my life growing up. He's one of the first people, besides my mama, right, who told me that I was beautiful when I thought that I wasn't, and so to be able to, when the opportunity came along, when Jason came to me and was like, we don't have this, I'm like, you know what, you don't have this, let me connect you. And then he spoke with Jane, and then I left after that, right?
Right.
They left and they did
but
all
Gene
the work.
Golden and Jason are like two powerhouses. I can't even
Right?
imagine.
No.
Right.
What you expect and
Right.
how you think it happened
Right.
is exactly how it happened. And I'm gonna let that story. I'm gonna let them tell that story for a
Right.
different day.
Yes,
but
we're
what
speaking
you
Jason into existence onto being on the show.
right? But what you think? Let me tell you, Jason. Oh man, I know we got to get out of here. This is gonna be 20 seconds. We were trying to find money for the ball that we were putting together, right? And I remember being on a call with the organization. I am not going to write out this organization, but we were on a call with the
First
organization.
of all, I think I know exactly what story about this.
Oh, girl.
On this call. So wait, for a little bit of context. So one of the things that we did was Arts and Culture Recovery Week, and one of the events of Arts and Culture Recovery Week was a ball. It was the Legends Ball.
Yes.
The Legends Ball, and was a celebration of ballroom culture in Philly and the icons that came from Philly ballroom culture.
Exactly.
Probably one of my most favorite events we've ever done.
Definitely was. And Dom and I had to figure out how to fund it. And that was the first time that I ever had to find money for anything.
Right.
Let alone we looking for
$10,000, right.
So we're like holding interviews with people that we want to, this is what's hilarious. We're asking for money from them, right? So asking money from somebody and holding people accountable for their faults at the same time is some bullshit.
Especially with the other people that call like,
it's some bullshit. And like, it was so funny because he was like,
"You're not coming in here doing that."
exactly. He was like, yes, I need this amount of money for sure. But what you're not going to do is A, B, and C. And I have a history with you guys doing X, Y, and Z. And no, you won't be doing that to what it is that I'm trying to do because we don't respect that. I mean, honestly, nobody in my community respects that.
Right.
And I was just like,
And if you're doing that as my wild card, imagine how I'm inside, like,
because now you got the double wild card. Because
No,
oh man, but I love, but you know what though, that was an amazing experience because the person on the call was like, hold up, you know what I mean, and and that person had to let go of their ego to receive his critique,
right, which is a very real critique of
which was an amazing critique, right? Now again, I don't live like I would like to say that I am adjacent, right? I'm not in the community, I'm community adjacent. And so I don't know everything. But what I do know is once it's said to me and it makes sense, I'm gonna back you all the way.
Right.
All right? Like and that was a moment where he was like, no, I'm not doing X, Y, and Z. And I thought about it and I'm like, yeah, no, we're not doing X, Y, and Z, right? Like it wasn't like we were like, oh no, don't do that.
Right.
We were like, no. Now that you bring it up.
Right, and this is like that goes against the whole meaning of what the week was about. Like
Right.
how we're covering the artists, but then at the same time, like continuing to put their pressure into funding this.